Well, there's been lots of talk about the Manley report recently, and I know to a lot of people, myself included, their recommendations didn't come as much of a surprise. You know, this was a panel made of conservatives and headed by someone who agreed with the conservative position. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the credibility of the recommendations.
Well, the first thing to say is that we needed a fresh, objective analysis of Canada's mission in Kandahar. We desperately need that kind of objective new look, but unfortunately, this wasn't what we needed. In fact, there are some quite glaring omissions in the report. There's no discussion of the need to negotiate with anyone other than our friends. Negotiate with NATO, negotiate with Pakistan, but no discussion of the need to talk to elements of the insurgents or to talk with Iran. There's only one short paragraph on the issue of detainees, one of the central issues. So the report is entirely focused on the military options. And that seems to me to be unfortunately limited. And then you have the additional, I think, serious problem that the chair of the report was already quite publicly on the record in terms of what he thought.
Right.
In a piece that he wrote in a journal called Policy Options last October, before the Manley panel was actually created. And one of the most disturbing things is that he actually cut and pasted from that earlier article in his foreword to the report. In other words, this fresh look was actually a cut and paste job. I happen to think that 78 dead Canadian soldiers deserve better than that.
Well, we've been in Afghanistan since 2001, and all the information that we're getting as feedback from the mission seems to say that the mission's not working. You know, violence has increased, opium productions have reached record volumes, and the most obvious sign that it's becoming more unstable is that more Canadian troops are losing their lives. And I know the NDP's been very consistent in saying that there's no military solution for Afghanistan, that we need a more comprehensive approach, and that NATO isn't going to provide that comprehensive approach. It's a military body. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think it's quite clear that there is no military solution to this. President Karzai of Afghanistan has said that there's no military solution to the challenges in Afghanistan. We do need a comprehensive approach. And I would even go so far as to argue that the forward-leaning counterinsurgency approach is actually creating more problems than it could ever solve. There was a Canadian Major General, Andrew Leslie, who a few years ago said that every time you kill an angry young man in Afghanistan, that 10 more come after you. Every time you drop a bomb on a village and kill innocent women and children, 100 angry young men come after you. This approach is not working. It's the exact same approach that the Americans tried in Iraq, where it failed spectacularly, and I'm not sure why we're doing it again. When we've learned through the loss of our soldiers and through the increasingly serious security problems, the dramatic increase in opium production, when we've learned that this approach simply isn't working, and quite frankly, why is a failed approach going to work by adding 1,000 more soldiers? If you're in a hole, as I think we are, you stop digging, you don't dig faster. And what we need in the long term is to think about the transition out of the NATO mission and into something else. And eventually that will be the United Nations. Whether that's in the next couple of years or 5 or 10 years down the road, I don't know. But NATO is not going to be in Afghanistan in 10 years' time. We're not going to be in a counterinsurgency. Quite simply, the other NATO countries won't support that. In fact, I'm always struck by how people somehow assume that 4 or 5 NATO countries in the south of Afghanistan have got it right, and the 21 NATO countries who stayed away have somehow got their analysis wrong. I would think the balance of probabilities lies with countries like Germany that have analyzed the situation to death and concluded that the mission in the south simply cannot succeed.
Well, I think we'd all agree that we have an obligation to the people in Afghanistan to not make things worse. And you've said that, you know, our counterinsurgency mission is possibly the cause of the increase in violence, the increase in instability. And I know that studies on terrorism say these groups feed on instability. So our presence there is actually making the Taliban stronger. They're using us as a recruitment tool. Would you agree with that?
I think that the current approach is creating more problems. I'm not sure that the idea of abandoning Afghanistan altogether is something that anyone, including the NDP, advocates.
Right.
I haven't heard that from Jack Layton, and I know that he feels that Canada has an important role to play in that country. It's a question of the approach that you play and the kind of people you need to send there. And quite frankly, soldiers in tanks are not the best way to win hearts and minds. What we need is an approach that stops trying to go out and engage the enemy in remote tribal regions, but instead focuses on reconstruction, on development, on negotiation, defending ourselves and civilians when necessary, but talking first and shooting later rather than shooting first and talking later. It's a quite dramatic shift, and it's one that Canada's soldiers are almost uniquely qualified to serve. Quite frankly, it's modern peacekeeping, peacemaking. It's what our soldiers have trained to do for decades now. And it's not for wimps, but it requires a degree of maturity and a broader range of skills than soldiers from some other countries have.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.